Alpine Liquid Fertilizers is your full season crop fertility specialist from start to finish. Visit alpinepfl.com for more.
Hi, I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am reporting from the Western Canada Conference on Soil Health and Grazing, here with Dr. Tim McAllister of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada.
That's great.
And so, Tim, it's great to see you.
Thank you very much for a great opportunity.
So you have been doing some work with soil microbiomes.
Yeah, well, microbiomes across the whole agricultural system, actually. So that includes the microbiomes associated with the animal, the microbiomes associated with the crops, microbiomes associated with the soil, and then the microbiomes associated with water as well.
That's a lot to keep in your head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we call it One Health because we're looking at the interaction between all of those microbiomes.
Very cool. And what does the project actually look like that you're doing with that?
Well, it involves collecting samples from cattle, from cropland, soil land, out of water systems, both some of the waste streams that are coming off of livestock production systems, as well as from surrounding creeks and rivers and that as well.
Great. And how long have you been working on this?
We've been working probably close to 10 years on this project.
Wow.
As a whole, it started out like the technologies that enable us to do that kind of work have been continuously evolving, both in their ability to sequence the genetic material we isolate from those environments, as well as our ability to analyze the huge quantity of data that analysis produces.
Okay, and what's the purpose of it? What was the intentional purpose
Well,
going in?
it's really to look at the nature of the microbes and how they interact with their hosts. So how do the microbes that are associated with the cow influence the health of the cow? When can that microbiome go wrong and cause health issues in the cow? Same with the soil and the implications for fertility and plant health as well, whether there be potential problems with fungus like Fusarium or that may cause negative effects on plant health.
Right.
Versus the healthy microbiome that's associated with plants as well.
Cool. And what are some of the findings that you've had?
Well, that it's an incredibly complex system, and that there's interlinkages between them. So interacting of, proper handling, for example, manure, and using manure as a fertilizer, replacing that with chemical fertilizer, utilizing that contributes to soil health because of the organic matter and the range of substrates that are present in manure for the soil microorganisms to utilize. That creates more opportunity for them for crop health in terms of providing more available nutrients than what one would typically see, and the benefits to that. And then that has impacts on forage quality and the value of it, that product is a feed for the animals. So it's kind of like the One Health of microbiome, or the circle of microbiomes, like we talk about the circle of life, right?
Right, that's incredible. And so coming from the early days of the project, what were some surprises that you found versus what your hypothesis was to begin with?
Well, I think the surprises were how we could change like the diet of the animal and how that would alter the microbiome in the rumen in a favorable manner, or when things went wrong, for example, some of the digestive upsets like acidosis or bloat that cattle can develop, why that microbiome went array and wasn't functioning the way we wanted it to. So how can we adjust the diet and what we feed to the animal to maintain that microbiome in a healthy state and avoid those disease-related issues.
Right. Do you know if the soil microbiome has any effect on the activity of bloat in cattle?
Well, it can, because the soil microbiome can influence the type of crops you can grow. Types of crops you can grow will influence the risk of bloat.
Right.
So that linkage can take place where the one microbiome has an influence on the other. And insects can have a role in that as well, in the type of microbiomes they have, because they all have their own individual microbiome as
Right.
well. So there's insects that can attack. There's a good example of a particular beetle called the black beetle that attacks ryegrass. And if ryegrass has endophytes, which is another microorganism associated with it, it'll be resistant to that black beetle. But if it doesn't, then it's subject to being attacked by that black beetle, which will result in white clover replacing the ryegrass in the pasture, and
Yeah.
then white clover can result in bloat in the animal. So
Wow.
it's all interlinked.
And so what is your hope for the impact of your research? Where are you hoping that this goes?
Well, to give us a greater understanding, because a lot of those whole processes are driven by microorganisms. They're usually often not identified as being responsible for that because they're in the background. We usually don't see them, and don't realize they're there. But if we can gain the understanding using these advanced genomic techniques that we use as to how those microbiomes are functioning, then we can suggest best management practices and ways that we can maintain those microbiomes in a healthy state that's beneficial to the plant and animal hosts as well as to the environment.
Right, and I'd imagine that even if, say, your goal is to grow ryegrass, right, understanding exactly what's happening in the soil is going to help you.
A big benefit for that as well. And you know what you can do to, if you've got pathogens like the beetle that I mentioned, how can you make its microbiome so it's unfavorable to the beetle as a way of reducing its survival and the impact that it has on the crop as well.
Right. So you must have quite the team behind you.
Yes, it's a really big group of people across the country, depending upon what project you're talking about. We have our largest project is probably related to antimicrobial resistance of the microbiome, and that involves people, livestock, and the environment all as part of that, and that's across the country. So there's a large group of scientists.
And what is the hope for that antimicrobial resistance?
Well, we're investigating the factors that lead to antimicrobial resistance, how we can use alternatives like probiotics or plant bioactives to replace antimicrobials in livestock diets, for example. What are the major threats to human health from a perspective of antimicrobial resistance, and which pathogens might acquire those antimicrobial resistance genes, how those genes are passed between different bacteria. All of that is part of it, and how those bacteria move within the environment as well.
Cool. And how far along are you in that work?
Well, it's getting, we've been at that for a few years as well. We've developed the pipelines for all that analysis to look at the antimicrobial resistance genes. So all of the antimicrobials that are used in human and in livestock medicine are tracked within that system. So, and there's a lot of different genes, several thousand genes that are involved in antimicrobial resistance. So
that's incredible. And then I guess my final question is, where is this data being held, and is there access to it?
Well, we store a lot of it. There's what we call the NCBI, which is an international database. When we sequence either DNA that's isolated from the environment or DNA that's isolated from an individual organism, and we publish a scientific paper, we report that sequence data through that database, and it's available to the scientific community as a whole. So it's part of our Canada's open data type of policy and making data available to other nations as well. So when they do global analysis, some of that data is coming from Canada that's contributing to that.
That's incredible, and some really great work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank
and
you.
that was
Pleasure.
Dr. Tim McAllister on Real Agriculture.